transforms novelist Anthony Hopkins in Shadowlands. And Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau continue a lifelong feud in Grumpy Old Men.
A Vietnamese woman is torn away from her land and thrown into a strange new urban world in Oliver Stone's Heaven and Earth. That's one of 5 new films we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. We'll also be looking at new movies starring Academy Award contenders Anthony Hopkins and Daniel Day-Lewis, and a comedy reuniting Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is Heaven and Earth, and this is the first time I've really been disappointed by director Oliver Stone in a long time. I think this is a very sketchy, rough work with narration that merely states emotion, substituting for his usual dramatic intensity. As we follow the fortunes, as Roger mentioned, of a young Vietnamese woman during the American War in her country.
When the soldiers came, I fought to keep my village and my family from being torn apart.
We are the soldiers of liberation! Help us win this war, and you get to keep your property and everything else you love.
Hip T. Lee plays the woman, and her suffering during the war is tragic, of course, but nothing that is surprising on the screen. Not much better is when she is befriended by an American sergeant, Tommy Lee Jones, in his most predictable work in years.
Is this your little brother?
What?
Is this handsome little boy your relative?
My son.
Oh, of course he is. He looks just like you. There's a lot of spirit around the eyes.
The film does break out of familiar territory when Jones's tour of duty is over and he and his growing family come back to an America that we get to view through a foreigner's eyes. Here's where director Stone shines for the first time in this film.
In denying, we drive past these hospitals, past people that our bombs had blown to bits, and then wave. Boys and girls with no arms, no legs, waving at us like the tourists on the way to the beach. Why? Because they're happy to be alive. They're glad to see us. And we put them where they were. And there's 20 of them, dead or mutilated, for every one of us. So don't expect Lee to do handstands over your damn turkey.
Some of those scenes are very good. I appreciate that Oliver Stone gives us the Vietnamese view of the war, a point of view not represented previously in Hollywood war films. But again, we're told how bad things are in narration and not in original scenes, save for a few of the American passages. Sorry to say, but you won't be surprised very often by Heaven and Earth.
Well, all I'm surprised by is your review. There's very little narration in this film, Gene, and there are a great many dramatic scenes that show the life of this woman as she is torn off. Well, sure, she talks to us a little bit at the beginning, but what about the dramatic scenes where she's dealing with the Viet Cong and they're dealing with her and they're assaulting her?
I guess.
And then when the Americans
I didn't think that those were anything that I hadn't sort of seen before.
I don't think you've seen exactly
prisoner of
anything
war
like
stuff
that
in war
before.
films.
One of the things that this movie really, I think, emphasizes is the fact that while trying to win the hearts and minds of these people, we took them off of their land, put them into so-called strategic hamlets, so that they had to leave the places that their ancestors had made sacred. And this was why we could basically never win the war. And then it shows the whole dynamic that brings her to Saigon and gets her involved in the sex industry. That isn't done with a lot of narration.
No, the stuff that you just said, bring her to Saigon with the sex industry, that, I think, viewers of Vietnamese war films certainly have heard that story.
Well, there's only one war. I mean, he can't make up a new war with original stuff in it. What he's doing here is, for the first time, showing that war through the eyes of a Vietnamese woman whose life was totally disrupted by it.
The only part that surprised me, the only thing where I saw something fresh, is when she got to America.
Well, I saw a lot more than that. Okay, next movie, and our next movie is Grumpy Old Men, the 6th comedy co-starring old buddies Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. This time, they're neighbors in a snowbound Minnesota town who have had a lifelong love-hate relationship. Sometimes their rivalry gets completely out of hand, as in this scene where they come to blows while ice fishing. They have to be separated, by Lemon's father, who is still alive, and played here by Burgess Meredith as a man who has been separating these two for maybe 70 years.
Now go to your shanties, all of you. You're scaring the fish away. Damn kids.
Lemon lives in fear of a visit from the Internal Revenue Service, which is why he tries to climb out the window when the doorbell rings in the middle of the night.
Oh.
Hi.
And that's Anne Margaret as Ariel, the new neighbor. Both men, of course, immediately fall in love with her, and jealousy is the fuel for more fights.
You're trying to steal her away just like you did me.
Oh, for God's sake, could I remind you, Einstein, May was no prize.
She was to me.
I was married to the woman 20 years. She was no prize.
She was to me.
Yeah, well, that's why you're a moron. If you'd ended up with May, you never would have had Amy. And Amy was a good woman.
She was the best.
Damn sight more loyal than May ever was.
Absolutely.
So
what?
Huh?
Meanwhile, the children of the grumpy old men, played here by Daryl Hannah and Kevin Pollak, have had crushes on each other since adolescence, but have never done anything about it.
I always knew, you know.
Knew what?
That you had a crush on me since 6th grade. You used to watch me with your dad's binoculars.
What?
Mm-hmm.
No.
You never wondered why my curtains were open just enough?
I thought I was lucky.
Grumpy Old Men contains a great deal of innate charm from Lemon, Mathau, and all of the other cast members, but charm is not enough. You begin to realize there's no reality in the characters. They live their lives either standing in front of their houses or peeking out from behind the curtains because they actually have no lives except those supplied by the requirements of the script and dialogue. Everything seems like a sitcom setup, and you can't help reflecting that Minnesota is a pretty big state, and Anne Margaret ought to be able to find someone to date without getting trapped between just these two grumpy old men.
Yeah, now we're back in agreement. And, you know, I felt that I was watching two Hollywood veterans, frankly, just walk through a very familiar situation for them. I didn't feel that they had, and not for a second, was anything specific about these characters written for them, and they didn't play that way. I didn't laugh at all. I thought that they were just cashing a paycheck. Coming up next, Oscar winner Anthony Hopkins falls in love with Deborah Winger in Shadowlands.
How could Joy be my wife? I'd have to love her, wouldn't I? I'd have to care more for her than for anyone else in this world. I've been thinking about you. Yes, I've been thinking about you. Suddenly there you were.
Anthony Hopkins plays a confirmed British bachelor smitten by an American woman, Deborah Winger, in Shadowlands, based on the true love story between British author and educator C.S. Lewis and the American writer and fan who loved him. Anthony Hopkins plays Lewis with the same clarity and restraint in all of his work, a man who, as the film opens, lives comfortably in Oxford in the 1950s with his older brother, until Deborah Winger walks into his life. She's an admirer of his work.
Congratulations, Jack. You seem to have found a soulmate. I thought you believed we didn't have souls, Christopher. Well, yes. Now, I regard the soul as an essentially feminine accessory. Anima, quite different from animus, the male variant. This is how I explain the otherwise puzzling difference between the sexes. Where men have intellect, women have soul.
As you say, Professor Riley, I'm from the United States, and different cultures have different modes of discourse. I need a little guidance here. Are you trying to be offensive or just merely stupid?
Shadowlands contains one natural moment after another, a rare love story without phony problems thrown in.
I have been really hurt, you know? First time is always the worst. That was when my mother died.
How old were you?
9.
That's old enough to hurt.
Oh, yes. It was the end of my world.
Their relationship progresses beautifully until Winger gets sick, and suddenly Hopkins' belief in the power of religious faith is really tested.
Will you marry this foolish, frightened old man who needs you more than he can bear to say? Who loves you, even though he hardly knows how?
Just this once.
They're terrific together in scene after scene. What I like about this love story is that both Winger and Hopkins' characters come to realize what a blessing it is to find someone who loves you. That might seem like an obvious thought or simple thought, But how many films can you say where that's the discovery, where that really applies? Usually it's just about a phony problem thrown in that separates the lovers until they conquer it. I thoroughly enjoyed Shadowlands, a fine, restrained piece of work from director Richard Attenborough.
Boy, I sure did too. And you know, this is one, as you mentioned, of the few movies which is really about a meeting of the minds and a meeting of the hearts. These people are not just in love because it suits the requirements of the plot. And the performances, boy, you know, Anthony Hopkins is already apparently an Oscar frontrunner for Remains of the Day. Now comes this performance. How can you choose between them? And Deborah Winger, I think, deserves a nomination for her role. Yeah. These two people here are so true, so restrained. They are so perfectly modulated in the development of this love story between two people who are really on very thin ice, and especially the older man who doesn't really know that much about women.
Well, that's exactly it. Here is this woman who's comes at him, and he's frightened by that. There is a daring, and this is really true. It was also true in Remains of the Day, except it didn't work out the same way, where he has to take a risk to love. Yeah. And he's an emotional explorer in both films, and it's great work.
This has been a wonderful year at the movies, and especially for movies that adults will find challenging, and this is certainly one of the best ones. When we come back, Daniel Day-Lewis plays a victim of British injustice in the political thriller In the Name of the Father. British troops arrest a young Irishman in the middle of the night and charge him with a pub bombing that killed 5 people in an early scene from In the Name of the Father. That's Daniel Day-Lewis being arrested there in that scene, and his character is based on the real-life story of Jerry Conlon, one of the so-called Guildford Four who were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for the bombings. The movie shows him being tortured by British police, both physically and psychologically, before finally breaking down and confessing. The forced confession is the only real evidence against him.
Have you any other alibis?
I had told you before. I was with Paul Hill most of the day.
Johnny Conlon, like I said you would. Who's this?
Jerry Conlon.
Have you anything to say to him?
I've cleared my conscience. I advise you to do the same.
Jerry Conlon's father and several other people are also thrown into prison for the crime. The father is played here by Pete Postlethwaite.
This was our money. Oh, scum.
My name's Giuseppe Conlon. I'm an innocent man. So's my son. Shouldn't even be in here.
An IRA professional confesses to the bombings and tells the British they have the wrong people in jail, but it's bad politics to admit that the courts were wrong and the police were corrupt, and so the Guildford Four do 15 years in jail before their appeal is finally heard. Their lawyer here is played by Emma Thompson.
And by God, you've got
Pierce
your
is
blood,
making a
Mr.
political
Nixon.
speech. This is
You've
outrageous.
got the blood of Giuseppe Conlon, you've got the lifeblood of Carol Richardson, and you've got 15 years of blood and sweat and pain from my client.
In the Name of the Father is a very powerful film directed by Jim Sheridan, who also directed Daniel Day-Lewis in his Oscar-winning performance in My Left Foot. It shows how the British passed laws allowing them to jail suspects without any real evidence, and how the pressure to punish the IRA for its crimes led to the jailing of innocent people. It's a strong film, but I think it's a little too concerned with a lot of the details of its story, and would have played even stronger with a little judicious editing. Still, I recommend it.
I recommend it too, and I want to focus, I mean, obviously you have the passion of the story of innocent people wrongly imprisoned. What I like is that in addition to just telling that story, we got a very clear sense of the private lives, the workaday lives of the people involved early on in the film, and also the relationship with the father, between Daniel Day-Lewis's character and the father. And then Daniel Day-Lewis's performance, talking about great actors, I think this guy has clearly established himself at the front of the younger generation of actors worldwide. He has a range, a span of 15 years in this film, and there is real development in his character. He has to play this guy at very different stages of his life.
He starts out as a young man. He's really basically hapless and doesn't think about anything, and actually the 15 years in jail turned him into a very intelligent and focused person.
Yes, yeah, it is a very rich character that's been written in addition to The Cause. It's a good film, In the Name of the Father. Coming up next, family and friends try to prevent a young woman from making a big mistake in the Summerhouse.
Oh, Lily, I'm marrying a man nobody likes. Thought it was just me.
House, our third British film on this show, a small romantic comedy about how a worldly wise woman uses her wiles to break up the impending disastrous marriage between a friend's twerpy son and an innocent young woman. It's a nice little film, but that's all, full of banter, such as in this scene where the engaged girl, Lena Headey, is fussed over by her mother, played by Julie Walters, and a vampy friend, played by Jean Moreau.
I saved the thumb. It has its uses.
And while we're on the subject of blood, young lady, you really must go to confession.
I know.
I like to go to confession straight after I've been to the hairdresser. Makes me feel so complete, body and soul.
Here's a cute scene where the engaged girl's mother-in-law-to-be, Joan Plowright, and Jean Moreau come home drunk and confront the goofy fiancé, Plowright's son, played by David Threlfall. The time and place is 1950 suburban London. He's a bit too much to be believed.
Well, it does look strange at your age.
Better than the comedy is this scene where the mother-in-law-to-be says exactly what's on her mind.
Much as I don't want to see my son married to a woman who dislikes him, it's Margaret and what's apart.
But there won't be a wedding. There won't be a wedding.
But it's so late. We've left it so late. What can we do?
These are fine actresses, one and all. I just wish there was something credible about the guy in this story. He's so wildly overdrawn, even for a period film. The Summerhouse is innocent enough, but I honestly can't recommend it because of his character.
Well, you say it's a nice little film, and it is a nice little film, but there is one reason to recommend it, I think, and that's Jean Moreau's performance. Among all of these actresses, she stands out, or she is having such a terrific time. She is flamboyant here, she is flashy. She's the outsider who sizes up the situation and uses not only her years of experience, but also her feminine wiles in order to bring about a solution, and she's a lot of fun in this movie.
Yeah, but what about the guy, Roger? I mean, didn't you...
First of all, it's a comedy, and so it's okay for a guy to be a twerp in a comedy.
But, Roger, as you're watching these characters play themselves out, didn't you think, there's no way this guy's going to be...
I wasn't asking for realism. It would have been a less entertaining movie if he had been more realistic.
Oh, you think so? I think I would have felt that the battle was really joined, and I would have had a rooting interest as opposed to this stooge who's thrown in.
Okay, when we come back, our LaserDisc Pick of the Month, a special new collector's edition of one of the all-time bestsellers.
Brought to you by Pioneer Home Theater. You don't just watch it.
It's time again for our LaserDisc Pick of the Month. And my choice this month is the new special collector's edition of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. The movie is already the all-time bestseller on LaserDisc, but this new 3-disc edition adds some amazing features. For starters, there are 16 minutes of additional footage, including this scene where Arnold Schwarzenegger gets bullets plucked from his flesh.
Does it hurt when you get shot?
I sense injuries. The data could be called pain.
In addition to the scenes that have been put back into the movie, there are additional scenes the directors never used, like this alternative ending to the film, showing co-star Linda Hamilton aged by makeup.
How's that?
Thank you, Grandma.
The luxury of hope was given to me by the Terminator. Because if a machine can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too.
And there are 3 full sides of supplementary material, including director James Cameron and his collaborators, talking in detail about the immense amount of work that went into the movie and its special effects.
In addition, we layered in several exposures of particles load across the frame with an air cannon.
We essentially did 3 cameras photographing the entire setup at once. It was either 8 or 9 times that we did those over. The reset time seemed to average between 2 and 2.5 days.
The box 3-volume set with 3 sides of supplement costs $120, or you can buy just the expanded movie itself for about $50. Here's the bottom line. In its technical ambition and quality, the special edition of Terminator 2 is the most impressive LaserDisc I've ever encountered. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. We split on Heaven and Earth, Oliver Stone's epic story of a young Vietnamese woman whose whole world is uprooted by war. I was especially impressed by the performance of newcomer Hip T. Lee in the leading role. Gene, however, thought the film was over-narrated and predictable. 2 thumbs down for Grumpy Old Men, despite the effortless charm of old pros Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau. The story was so contrived the laughs didn't come naturally. Two very enthusiastic thumbs up for Shadowlands with Anthony Hopkins and Deborah Winger in the story of two lonely people who find each other and have a very special romance. And two more thumbs up for In the Name of the Father, the powerful IRA thriller, although a little more editing might have made it stronger. It opens in New York, LA, and Toronto on Wednesday and widens out next month. And finally, a split decision for The Summerhouse, the story of two women who quietly act together to prevent a marriage that would have been a disaster. I love Jean Moreau's work. Jean thought the movie was spoiled by the dopey male character, and so of all of these movies, the one I like the most is Shadowlands.
Yes, I think Shadowlands is very good, and I'm also impressed by Daniel Day-Lewis's work in The Name of the Father.
Yes.
That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with a special show, our look at the best movies of the year now ending, and it was a terrific year. We each picked 10 of our favorites from a year that had more good movies than any year since the 1970s. The very best of 1993, that's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.